These are the most tragic cruise ship deaths ever. Not accidents from a century ago. Not distant history. Real ships. Real people. Deaths that happened because of ignored warnings. Design flaws. Human error. And water. Cold. Dark. Unforgiving water. These are the disasters that prove the ocean does not care about experience. Or technology. Or how unsinkable you think your ship is. The RMS Titanic, 1912. On April 10, 1912, the RMS Titanic left Southampton, England, on its maiden voyage to New York City. The ship was 882 feet long and weighed 46,328 tons. Over 2,200 passengers and crew were on board. First-class cabins had private parlors and marble bathrooms. The Titanic was called Unsinkable. Captain Edward Smith commanded the vessel. The weather was perfect. Calm seas stretched in every direction. By April 14, the ship was 4 days into its journey. That evening, passengers dined in the Grand Saloon. Women wore their finest gowns. Men smoked cigars. Below deck, third-class passengers sang and danced. Nobody suspected this would be their last normal evening. The wireless operators received ice warnings throughout the day. But Captain Smith maintained full speed at 22 knots. At 11:40 p.m., lookout Frederick Fleet spotted something ahead. He rang the warning bell 3 times. Iceberg right ahead. First Officer William Murdoch ordered the engines reversed and the ship turned hard to port. The Titanic needed half a mile to turn. The iceberg was only 1,300 to 1,600 feet ahead. Time slowed. The massive ship began turning but not fast enough. The ship's starboard side scraped along the iceberg. Passengers in first class felt only a slight shudder. Some went on deck and picked up chunks of ice, laughing and throwing them at each other. They had no idea what was happening below. Below the waterline, the iceberg tore open at least 5 watertight compartments. Titanic could survive 4. But not 5. The captain ordered the lifeboats uncovered. There were only 20 boats. Together they could hold 1,178 people. Over 2,200 were aboard. At first, passengers refused to get in. The lifeboats looked tiny, hanging 70 feet above the dark ocean. The first lifeboats launched half empty. People did not believe the ship was sinking. Women refused to leave their husbands. Crew members were not trained. Chaos built slowly. By 2:05 a.m. the last lifeboat left. Over 1,500 people remained on board. The stern rose higher. People clung to rails. Some jumped into the water. Others prayed on deck. At 2:18 a.m. the lights went out. The ship broke in half. The bow section sank immediately. The stern slipped beneath the surface. Hundreds were thrown into the water. The water temperature was 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Within 15 minutes the screaming stopped. Silence fell over the water. The RMS Carpathia arrived at 3:30 a.m. and rescued about 705 survivors. Over 1,500 people died. Most from hypothermia. In water so cold that survival was measured in minutes. The Titanic disaster led to sweeping changes in maritime safety. Enough lifeboats for everyone on board became mandatory. Continuous radio watches. Ice patrols in the North Atlantic. But 1,517 people were already dead. Because the ship was called Unsinkable. And it was not. The MS Estonia in 1994. On September 27, 1994, the MS Estonia left Tallinn, Estonia for Stockholm, Sweden. The ferry was 515 feet long and carried 989 people. Most were Swedish and Estonian passengers heading home. It was supposed to be a routine overnight crossing. Passengers settled into their cabins around 7 p.m. The ship had restaurants, a bar and a disco. People ate dinner, danced and played cards. It felt like any other night. The Baltic Sea was rough that night. Waves reached 13 to 20 feet. Wind speeds hit 56 miles per hour. The ship had been listing slightly all day because of poor cargo distribution. A few crew members noticed. But none reported it. Around midnight, most passengers went to bed. Then something happened. Crew members heard loud metallic bangs from the bow. The bow visor, a massive steel door that covered the car deck ramp, was being battered by waves. The locking mechanisms were failing. The visor was designed to withstand normal seas. But not this. At 1:02 a.m. the bow visor broke off completely. It tore away the ramp behind it. The car deck was now open to the sea. Water poured in. Tons of it. Every second. The ship began to list to starboard. Hard. Fast. Passengers woke up to the sound of crashing. Furniture sliding. Water rushing. The ship was tilting at a severe angle. People tried to get out of their cabins. But the hallways were tilted. Doors would not open. Water was rising. Panic spread. At 1:20 a.m. the Estonia sent a mayday signal. "We have a severe list. We need immediate assistance." The ship was listing 40 degrees to starboard. Walking was impossible. Climbing was the only option. People clawed their way up tilted hallways. Some made it to the deck. Most did not. By 1:30 a.m. the ship was on its side. Lifeboats could not be launched. They were designed to drop straight down. But the ship was horizontal. Lifeboats swung uselessly. Passengers jumped into the water. The water temperature was 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Hypothermia would set in within minutes. At 1:48 a.m., the MS Estonia capsized completely. The ship rolled over and sank. In less than an hour, a 515-foot ferry with 989 people on board was gone. Rescue ships arrived. They pulled people from the water. 137 survivors. 852 dead. Most drowned. Or died from hypothermia. The investigation found that the bow visor locking mechanism was faulty. The design was flawed. The visor had been repeatedly damaged in previous rough seas. Reports had been filed. Nothing was done. And 852 people died in less than an hour. Because a steel door broke. And the sea came in. The MV Wilhelm Gustloff, 1945. On January 30, 1945, the MV Wilhelm Gustloff left the port of Gotenhafen, Poland, carrying over 10,000 people. Most were German civilians fleeing the advancing Soviet Red Army. Refugees. Women. Children. Wounded soldiers. The ship was designed to carry 1,880 passengers. It was carrying over 5 times that. The ship had been a luxury cruise liner before the war. But by 1945, it was a refugee transport. Overcrowded. Under-equipped. And sailing through a war zone. The Baltic Sea was freezing. The temperature was below zero. The water was just above freezing. And Soviet submarines were hunting in the area. At 9 p.m., the ship was sailing without escort. The German Navy had assigned minesweepers to protect the Gustloff. But they turned back due to bad weather. The ship was alone. Captain Friedrich Petersen ordered the ship's navigation lights turned on. To avoid collisions with other German vessels. It made the ship visible. To everyone. At 9:08 p.m., Soviet submarine S-13, commanded by Captain Alexander Marinesko, spotted the Gustloff. Marinesko had been hunting for targets for days. He positioned his submarine, lined up his shot, and fired 3 torpedoes. At 9:16 p.m., the first torpedo struck the bow. The second hit near the empty swimming pool, which had been converted into a women's quarters. The third struck the engine room. All 3 torpedoes hit within seconds. The ship began to sink immediately. Panic was instant. Thousands of people surged toward the deck. The ship was tilting. Doors jammed. Stairways collapsed. People were trampled. Crushed. Children were separated from parents. The cold was unbearable. The ship's lifeboats were frozen to their davits. Crew members tried to free them. Some broke loose. Most did not. People jumped into the water. The water temperature was 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Survival time was minutes. Not hours. Minutes. The ship listed heavily to port. And in less than 50 minutes, the MV Wilhelm Gustloff sank, taking over 9,000 people with it. Rescue ships arrived. They pulled survivors from the water. 1,252 people survived. Over 9,000 died. It is the deadliest maritime disaster in history. More than the Titanic. More than the Lusitania. More than any other single ship sinking. And most people have never heard of it. Because it happened during a war. To refugees. And the story was buried. But the Wilhelm Gustloff remains the deadliest shipwreck in recorded history. And it happened in less than an hour. The Costa Concordia, 2012. On January 13, 2012, the Costa Concordia, a modern cruise ship carrying 4,252 people, sailed past the island of Giglio off the coast of Italy. Captain Francesco Schettino ordered the ship to sail close to the island. A maneuver called a salute. To show off. To impress people on shore. It was not part of the planned route. It was dangerous. And it was against company policy. At 9:45 p.m., the ship struck a rock formation called Le Scole. The rock tore a 174-foot gash along the port side of the hull. Water poured into multiple compartments. The ship lost power. The engines stopped. The ship began to drift. Passengers were eating dinner. Watching shows. dancing. The impact felt like a slight bump. Most people did not react. But crew members knew. The ship was flooding. And it was listing. Art. Captain Schettino initially told passengers it was just an electrical failure. He delayed the evacuation order for over an hour. By the time he finally ordered abandon ship, the ship was listing so severely that half the lifeboats could not be launched. They were on the high side. Useless. Passengers climbed down rope ladders, jumped into the water, scrambled onto rocks. The ship was tilting. Furniture was sliding. Water was rising. And the captain, Francesco Schettino, abandoned ship. Before most passengers. Before the evacuation was complete. He left. The Costa Concordia came to rest on its side, partially submerged just off the coast of Giglio. 32 people died. Most drowned. Some were trapped inside the ship as it rolled. Rescue operations continued for days. Survivors were pulled from the wreckage. But 32 did not make it. Captain Schettino was arrested. Tried. Convicted of manslaughter, causing a maritime disaster and abandoning ship. He was sentenced to 16 years in prison. The ship was salvaged in 2014. One of the largest and most expensive maritime salvage operations in history. But 32 people were already dead. Because a captain wanted to show off. The pattern. The Titanic sank because it was called Unsinkable. And warnings were ignored. The Estonia sank because a bow visor failed. And previous damage reports were ignored. The Wilhelm Gustloff sank because it was overcrowded and sailing through a war zone. Alone. The Costa Concordia sank because a captain ignored safety protocols. To impress people. Every one of these disasters involved ignored warnings. Design flaws. Human error. And water. Cold. Dark. Unforgiving water. Ships are built to float. But when they do not, people die. Quickly. And in large numbers. Because the ocean does not give second chances. It does not care about experience. Or reputation. Or how many safety drills you ran. The ocean is patient. And it is always waiting.